A fine mist of freezing rain clings to the stubble on a young man's chin. His hands are raised high above his helmet, trembling slightly. Steam billows from his mouth with every ragged breath. Across a snow-dusted Belgian road, dark figures emerge from the dense pines. Their long gray coats are stark against the white landscape. The twin lightning bolts of the Waffen-SS are visible on a collar. A massive Panzer tank, its engine rumbling, crushes the thin ice of a puddle. The date is December 17th, 1944, and for these American soldiers, the war is supposed to be over. This is the Ardennes Forest, a place of grim fairy tales and now the setting for Hitler's last, desperate gamble in the West. The Battle of the Bulge has just exploded across the front. An overwhelming force of German armor and infantry smashes into a thinly held American line. The men of the American 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion are not hardened frontline combatants. They are technicians, specialists caught in the path of the spearhead. Their convoy of trucks and jeeps rounds a bend near the Bognez Crossroads, 5 kilometers from the town of Malmedy. Suddenly, the winter silence is torn apart. The lead vehicle erupts in a ball of orange flame and black smoke. A German tank shell has found its mark. Men dive from their trucks, scrambling for the frozen ditches. Muzzle flashes light up the foggy tree line. A machine gun on a half-track shatters, its tracers zipping through the air. The American .50 caliber on a Jeep answers back, a deep, thumping report. For a few frantic minutes, chaos reigns. But the Americans are hopelessly outgunned, their light vehicles no match for the steel beasts of Kampfgruppe Paper, the elite fighting unit of the 1st SS Panzer Division. A white flag, a piece of torn undershirt tied to a stick, is waved from a ditch. The firing sputters and dies down. Slowly, cautiously, American soldiers emerge from cover, their hands held high. Their faces show a mixture of terror and relief. They have survived. They are now prisoners of war. The SS troops, young, arrogant, and flushed with victory, stride forward. Their boots crunch on the snow-covered ground. They shove the Americans with their rifle butts, barking orders in harsh German. The prisoners are stripped of their weapons, their watches, their cigarettes, any small treasures from home. 120 Americans are herded together, their green uniforms a stark contrast to the white field. They are marched off the road, their hands still in the air or clasped behind their heads. The snow is deep here, seeping into their boots, the cold biting at their exposed skin. An SS officer, his face a mask of cold indifference, watches from the turret of his tank. The prisoners are forced to stand in tight rows, a silent, anxious crowd in the middle of a desolate field. The German column they had blocked begins to move past them on the road, a river of steel and men flowing towards the front. A few SS soldiers remain behind, their rifles held loosely, watching the captives. The minutes stretch into an eternity. A low murmur of nervous conversation ripples through the American ranks. Then, a sharp crack of a pistol shatters the frigid air. An American officer, standing tall, crumples forward into the snow. A second pistol shot follows, and another man falls. A sudden, terrible understanding flashes in the eyes of the prisoners. This is not a holding area. This is an execution ground. Then, the metallic chatter of a machine gun erupts from a German half-track. Hot brass casings spit from the weapon, forming a small, gleaming pile on the cold steel. A wave of lead rips through the huddled group of men. Bodies are thrown backwards, their winter coats suddenly dark with spreading stains. Shouts of pain and terror are cut short. Men drop to the ground, some feigning death, others already gone. The machine gun continues its horrific work, traversing back and forth relentlessly. The firing stops. An eerie silence descends, broken only by the groans of the wounded. An SS soldier lights a cigarette, the flare of the match briefly illuminating his young, emotionless face. He and another soldier walk into the field, their heavy boots stepping over the dead and dying. They move with a methodical purpose. A pistol is raised. A flash. A single shot to the head of a wounded man. They walk on. Another flash. Another shot. This is murder, cold and systematic. A young private lies perfectly still, his face pressed into the freezing snow, the smell of gunpowder and blood thick in his nostrils. He holds his breath, every muscle tensed, listening to the approaching footsteps. The boots stop right beside his head. He can see the worn leather, the mud caked in the sole. He waits for the final, searing pain. But the footsteps move on. He dares not move, not for an hour, then another. He hears the German column fade into the distance. Only then, when the silence is absolute, does he risk a glance. The field is a tableau of death, a grotesque landscape of twisted bodies under the gray Belgian sky. He sees another man stir nearby, then another. A handful of survivors, miraculously unharmed or only wounded, begin to crawl. They pull themselves through the snow, away from the carnage, towards the distant tree-line. Every snap of a twig sounds like a gunshot. Every shadow seems to hold new threat. They run, stumble, and crawl through the frozen wilderness, driven by a primal need to survive, to bear witness. They carry with them the images of the field, seared into their minds forever. Days later, American forces recapture the crossroads. A patrol stumbles upon the scene. The snow has fallen again, a clean white blanket over the horror. But protruding from the drifts are the frozen limbs and equipment of the dead. Medics and graves registration teams arrive. The work is grim and painstaking. They carefully excavate the bodies from their icy tombs. Each corpse is turned over. The medics note the wounds, the small, dark holes in the forehead or the back of the skull. This was no battle. This was a massacre. 84 American soldiers lie frozen in the Belgian snow. Word of the atrocity spreads like wildfire through the Allied ranks. It steels their resolve. The name Malmedy becomes a battle cry, a reminder of the enemy's barbarity. Soldiers scrawl the word on artillery shells before firing them into the German lines. The fight for the Bulge becomes more than a battle for territory, it becomes a fight for justice. When the war in Europe finally ends, the hunt for the perpetrators begins. Joachim Paper, the commander of the SS unit, and 70 of his men are tracked down and put on trial. In the cavernous hall of the former Dachau concentration camp, the proceedings begin. The defendants sit in the dock, their faces sullen, defiant. The survivors are called to testify. One by one, they take the stand. A man points a trembling finger at a face in the crowd of defendants, his voice cracking as he recalls the cold-blooded killing in the field. His testimony, and that of his fellow survivors, paints a chilling, undeniable picture of the events of December 17th. The verdicts are delivered. 43 of the defendants, including Paper, are sentenced to death by hanging. The others receive long prison sentences. Justice, it seems, has been served. But the story does not end there. A new shadow falls over the trials. Allegations begin to surface. The American investigators, in their zeal for justice, are accused of using brutal methods to extract confessions. Whispers of mock trials, beatings, and psychological torture circulate. A defendant claims he signed a blank sheet of paper, his confession written in later. A controversy erupts, questioning the very foundation of the verdicts. The sentences are reviewed. A U.S. Senate subcommittee investigates the claims of torture. The legal battle rages for years, a complex and morally gray postscript to a black and white atrocity. In the end, all the death sentences are commuted. By the mid-1950s, the last of the men convicted of the Malmedy Massacre are released from prison. The killers walked free. Today, at the Bognez Crossroads, a stone memorial stands sentinel. The names of the 84 murdered American soldiers are carved into its surface. The field where they died is quiet now, covered in grass, returning to nature. But the memory of that day remains a permanent scar on the landscape and on the history of the Second World War. It serves as a brutal reminder of the thin line between a soldier and a murderer and the agonizingly complex search for justice in the aftermath of total war. The frozen ground of Malmedy holds its secrets, a silent testament to a day when the rules of war were abandoned and humanity was lost in the snow. Tell me your favorite war story I should talk about next. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video.